All right. Yep.
So
So as of
we are done with the Python code. No, not yet.
not completely. We'll
Okay.
just explore a few other things. So
Okay.
basically, I will explain like what OOPS actually means, object-oriented programming, like in complete sense. Yesterday we explored mainly classes and object. We try to understand
Right.
what is
Right.
class
Right.
and what is object, right?
Yes.
And also we try to explain ourselves the difference between methods and functions. So we
Mm-hmm.
spend our time more on this, correct?
Correct.
So today we will explore like pillars of object-oriented programming and what do they mean. Okay. Uh, and what else did we explore yesterday? Just so the try except block, I guess we explored on this, correct?
Yes.
So how it is different from if else block. So this exception handling. So with the try except block, we study this under exception handling itself. So how to manage the exceptions that comes in, how to manage the errors that comes in, right? So that is what exception actually means. And then we checked on like how Pydantic is useful for us as AI engineers, correct? Or AI quality engineers. How Pydantic could be of great help for us for input validation or maybe output validation or even the step for validation, correct? So you can say to be for data validation, Pydantic is like go-to solution. And also I missed one pointer yesterday, I guess. So while explaining Pydantic, so yeah, it definitely makes it easier, right? So in order to validate the data, right? So that's the whole purpose of it. But is there a difference between like me writing up the code repetitively or using the Pydantic? Yeah, visibly, yes, less code with Pydantic and more code with like if I try to write it manually. And yeah, but is there any difference between how Python handles the things? Right. So it doesn't matter how much code I write it. Like Python executes it much faster than like I expect, right? So internally, Pydantic has some logic of its own. So how it validates the data. So is there a difference in the performance level using Pydantic or using our manual data validations? So for to answer that question, we have to understand. So any library in Python, right? So when we import some library for easy go, or let's say to make this code simple, it is not just about like readability or it just not is about like for like straightforward approach or maybe simple approach. It's more of these libraries could be built on some other programming languages. So basically, among the programming languages, Python is basically slow programming language. It executes slower because we have very high level like data types and everything. So list, so they are very flexible. All the list, all the maybe dictionary set, all these are very flexible data types. So these are like easy to operate on. So since they are easy because like there are a lot of stuffs that's helping us to operate over this particular data types in Python. Okay, so these are not fundamental data types like let's say hash table or let's just say array, okay, which comes in like C, C++, Java maybe. So that's why execution of code in Python is much slower than any of the other programming languages. But still, we use in the AI era, Python is like the ultimate programming language that's being used currently, right? So that's what you hear. Maybe any YouTube video or any news, anything. Okay, if there is AI, there is Python programming language. So why is that so? Like AI internally is computation ultimately, correct? So as we explored LLM, it is continuous computation that's happening internally, correct? I hope you do remember like the probability we explained. So how that machine learning actually predicts the next word, how the deep learning affects it, right?
Yes.
So it is all of calculating like probability, correct? So there are like a lot of mathematical operations that's being done internally to predict something, right?
Correct.
So if it is all about like mathematical calculation, so if it's all about maths and we say Python is slower, okay, it's a slow programming language. Then why Python for AI? Isn't it an obvious question?
Yes.
There are C, there are C++, the C hash, maybe Rust. There could be like Cobalt. There is Java, JavaScript. All those programming languages we do have, and these are like fundamentally very fast programming languages. Then why Python for AI? Yeah, that's like very obvious question.
True.
But yeah, we need to understand one thing here. So Python itself is a slow programming language. That is no question with that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but we have some libraries in Python which are built on. So when we say libraries, right, whatever we import. So we import like Pydantic, we import it. Request module, we import it. Correct. And then comes like maybe like Olama, we import it. We actually like we install that library and we import it. So it is not like Python specific. Correct. So all these things are actually written in some other programming languages. Okay. Internally, they are written in like other programming languages, which are much faster. Okay. Maybe this Pydantic. Okay. So this is built on Rust, and Rust is very fast in execution. This is very fast programming language. Okay. And this whole Pydantic internal logic is being written in like Rust, but it has got like a wrap of Python. So through Python, we can use it, but internally all the logic is happening with Rust. Okay. That's why this is very fast. So if I write a condition that if some data type, okay, if int is equal to like, let's say some variable A. So I'm checking with if this data type and this data type matches, and I'm checking like some writing some logic, and I'm again checking second variable, third variable, or maybe some data validation I'm doing. Okay, with this if else condition, we can do it, no worries. We did do it, right? We can do it, no worries. But when we put up like when we use this library called Pydantic, so we use it using Python, no worries. But internally, everything is executed under Rust. So this execution is much faster than actually passing through like Python code, because Python execution is slow. Understandable?
Arya, I joined late. What is Pydantic?
Okay. So did you get chance to like explore yesterday's class,
No, no,
Saru?
no. I never just fully occupied
Okay.
today.
Okay. So Pydantic is like a library, a Python library,
Mhm.
which allows us to like validate the data at any point of time. It may be input data or it may be like output data that's been like going out after the process happened, or it may be like for all the data validation process, right? We can use this
Mhm.
Pydantic, and we can
Okay.
restrict for some function. Imagine, let's take up an example. Okay. Yes. So this was the example we took. Okay. So let's just
Mhm.
say, so we have imported two elements from Pydantic. So base model and validation error. Okay.
Okay.
So this base model, what it does is, so within this base model, the class which inherits this base model, we will write like whatever the elements we want in an output. Okay. Or maybe for any data validation, whatever the elements we want, and what are the data types that's been expected here. Right. So here we are using this AI response. Okay. Where we are using this AI response here. Right. So we have a mock AI response. Okay. This is not actually a response. It's a mock AI response which I have created. So I'm passing. So whenever I get like LLM response, okay, this will be real LLM response. So whenever I get any LLM response, I pass it to this particular class, that is AI response. Okay. Since it inherits the base model that is in Pydantic,
Mhm.
here I have defined few elements. Okay. And by passing the LLM response into this class, I'm ensuring all these elements which I have mentioned here, right? They do exist in this response. If not, it will throw up an error. That could be like validation error. Okay. So here basically what I'm doing is the validation process, the data validation. So there should be like something called model name, a key, and there
Mhm.
should be string. it should be like of a string format, and there should be tokens used parameter. So let's say this is the element, and it should be in integer type. Okay, there should be like generated text element, and it should be of string format, string data type. Okay, so whenever
Okay.
the response, let's say this is the output that's been expected. So this is our API, and whenever a request comes into this API, so you're familiar with the API concepts, right? So yesterday also we
Yes, yes.
discussed on APIs. Yes. Okay, great. So let's just say I'm responding some data once that API hits, right? So this could be the data. So every time I need to check these particular elements exist in my response. This may be the condition, okay? And this is output validation. Or let's just say I need I need to validate the LLM response. So whenever LLM responds, I need to validate this. So these elements, they are like certainly there in the LLM response. For this validation purpose, right? So wherever I need data validation, I could use this Pydantic model. Okay, this is strictly for data validation to enforce the formatting, data types and everything. Okay. So
Yes, yes, yes. Understood, understood.
yeah, so internally it handles this data type conversion too. So let's say you are passing like here tokens used is integer, it's mentioned, correct? So let's say in the response, instead of like tokens used here, you are sending a string which is like which could be converted to integer. Then it handles it internally and it says like it's integer and it doesn't throw up an error. But let's say instead of 2 here, the token used is something like ABC. Okay, this can't be converted to integer, right? So this should throw up an error, and it will throw up an error. Okay, and uh, does that make sense? Okay. So also yesterday we discussed on like this try and except blocks.
Try catch. Okay, okay.
So try catch is in Java, I guess.
Okay, okay.
If I
Here we have
remember
try
it correctly.
except.
Yes. So in Python we have like try except, where we are actually managing like we are handling the exceptions.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
if something comes in, so that we are handling it here. So if you're familiar with it, great. So yesterday I have explained it again, so you can go through like. Okay.
Okay, okay. Do we have something like a final here? Final clause? Final keyword?
Yeah, we do have finally actually.
Try, except, and final. They go in a
Yes.
sequence. Okay, okay.
So something like this.
Finally. Okay, okay.
Yeah, finally is not a necessary. So this is like if try exists, there should exist like except. Okay, finally is not necessary, but whenever you have something, let's say, so this try and except block, either of this will run. Okay, in the try block it tries to execute, and if there are some errors, the except block will run. Correct? That's right. Manogna?
Yes.
Right. So yesterday we discussed this. So what this finally does is, okay. So what is this finally run is, so doesn't matter if the try is successful or there is an exception that's happening. Okay. Finally will always run. That's the property of finally block. Okay. So where this is usually used is, so let's just say you are creating an API which actually connects to, like depending on user request, it connects to backend, let's just say some database. Okay, so it connects to database. So there is a connection string you are creating while in order to access that like database. And once you deal with like you are trying to fetch something or you are trying to update some value, once you're done with it, right? So while returning any while responding or once you complete the process, you have to close that connection. Okay, you can't leave the connection open. We have to close that connection in any ideal scenario, correct? So in order to close it, right? So we'll write every logic of ours. So to deal with the database in try block. And if some exception comes in, maybe connection or network issue, or maybe we have hosted this code in AWS and AWS went down or something like that. Okay. Then the exception actually occurs. Okay. Doesn't matter if try is successful or accept is successful. In the finally, what we will write is we are actually closing the connection manually. Okay, this is always executed. Doesn't matter if the interaction is successful or not. Once the code is completed, right? When the code is executed, the connection has to be closed to that database. Okay, so that particular code we can write in finally block. Okay, so here you can see. So since tokens used has like ABC and we are expecting token used to be integer, so this will throw up an error, validation error. Okay, so this is right, printing over like whatever the print statement we have written. So that is one validation error for AI response, token used, all the details. And finally that you can see the print statement, okay, finally I ran, correct? So this code will be executed, doesn't matter whether try run successfully or exception happens, doesn't matter, the finally will always run. Okay. Thanks, Saurabh, for reminding me this. I totally forgot about
Yep.
it.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure.
Yeah, so done with it. So I was just explaining. So data validation
Arya,
we can do it
just a
manually.
quick question. Since we are discussing that try catch, try accept. So except we are catching the exception in some class, right? Can you go back there? We are catching it some class. Uh, Class type, we are catching it some class type, like I see validation error as E. Yeah, so validation error is a
Yes.
class, right? Or it's a uh,
So yeah, so
validation error
basically,
must be a class.
so here the validation error, this validation error is actually imported from like Pydantic. In
Pydantic,
Pydantic, they have explained this particular method where the validation
base
error,
model.
if it
Yes,
happens, how
yes.
to handle it. Okay. So
Okay, okay.
traditionally in Python, we don't have validation error. So we don't validate the data. Python
Mhm.
doesn't allow us to like validate the data. We can do it with our logic, but
Okay,
by default, it
but
doesn't allow us, right?
yes, yes,
So
yes,
this is something which we have imported from Pydantic. So what is
yes, yes,
natural
yes.
to us in Python is like type error, or could be there could be value error, or could be zero
It can
division
handle
error.
all type of data error. In short, like all
Yes.
kind of data error,
So
like data is not matching, data type is not matching. Probably a two is comparing with a string two, then it throws error exception like that.
yes. So this is the exception we use. So it catches like except syntax errors, it catches like all type
Mhm.
of errors
Yes,
in
yes,
general.
yes.
Okay. If you
Okay,
want to
okay,
like
okay.
make it like a specific, we have to mention the type error or the maybe type error or other errors, whatever the errors we get, right? So we have to mention it in particular. Okay.
Okay, okay.
But with actually typing up like exception, it actually handles every like it's a common exception. So whatever the error happens, it catches it and it writes it. Okay. So yeah, there could be like in simple terms, I can just explain this and move on. But if you want to like go in depth, like how this could be used, why to mention
Mhm.
a type error or let's say a zero division error or let's say other errors. Okay, if we can write up this exception and catch all the errors. Why to mention those errors? Okay, so it could be a condition that let's say exception. Okay, let me type like value error. Okay. This is value error E, and I type up some condition here. This could be some logic. Okay, and I could write up another exception. Except here I could maybe suggest. Okay, we have validation here. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. We can write this, and but we can also write something like so. Error as E. Okay, that is our code. Okay, and any other errors. Okay, whatever the error may be. Okay, so by writing this, what happens is so this try block it tries to execute this try block, and if some error comes in, okay, now initially some error comes in. Okay, let's just say it may be like validation error. So initially it checks like what type of error it is. If it is a value error, this particular code will run. Okay, you may write up like custom logic. So what happens if there is a validation error? Okay, and this particular code will run. And if the error that occurred is zero division error, okay, this happens when something divided by zero comes in. So it's mathematically impossible to calculate it, right? So that's why this error exists, zero division error. So let's just say this error has happened. Then this particular logic, whatever we write under this zero division error, right? So this will run. Okay. All the except blocks won't run, only this except block will run now. Okay. And if this is a validation error, okay, it's a Pydantic validation error, then this block will run particularly. All these other two blocks, they won't run. Okay. And at the last, while after writing everything, then I can write except. So if there is any unforeseen circumstances, okay, then I can catch like any other errors that comes in, and I can write up a general logic. Make sense? So if value error comes in, I have a custom logic of my own. I could write it here, and that logic will run. If it is a zero division error, I can write up some custom logic that will run when the zero division error actually happens. Okay. If all this error doesn't happen, then if there are some other errors like not these, then this exception will handle it like in general sense. Okay. So only one try block, but many except block we can write it. No worries. All right. So it doesn't matter whether any of these except block will run or this try block will run successfully. Finally, will always run. Understandable? Any doubts here? I mean, here with this example, I just wanted to show you guys, like it is not essential to write only to handle the exception. So handling the exception is not just to handle the error. It is to handle error in such a way that there is some custom logic which we will implement in order to handle that particular error. Okay. So how we will implement it? This was the example. I hope no doubts with that.
Sure, sure.
Right. All right. So yeah, so that's why Pydantic is much faster than writing a Python, like our own logic to validate the data. Okay, and then we discussed about like method classes and objects particularly. That's important, Saurabh. If you know it already, no worries. Just
Okay.
go through the session if you have some doubts with that. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we went through like these extensively and classes and objects majorly, and also what's the difference between function and methods. Okay, this we
Okay.
explore. So and also with like what is API, application program interface. Okay, so that we discussed. So today we will be going further with it. Okay. So since we ended with Python, sorry, APIs, so let's just explain APIs first, and then I will get back to OOPS. We have missed a few of the elements in OOPS, which we will cover today. Okay. Half of the session timing is already over now. Fine. We will just go fast. Okay, no worries. So majorly we have like four different. Okay. So majorly we do. Okay, write something here. Oh, okay. It's some yellow background. Okay, that makes sense. Right. So HTTP request methods, there are majorly four types of request methods. Okay. So one is get, the other is post, and this is put, and this is delete. So I will explain it like what it means and when to use these HTTP requests. Okay. And then I will explain like with an example how to explain how does this explanation justifies it. Okay. So get method. So we call these methods. Okay. So these are HTTP request methods. So get method is usually used when you have to like you are a client, okay, or you could be another API or a client, let's say, okay. So you have to connect to a server, and in this particular architecture, right? So you are not sending any particular data to it, okay. So you are only pinging this API. You are just calling this API, okay. You are not sending any data from your end, but the server is responding back with the data, okay. So in this architecture, we usually use get methods. Okay. What it does is it gets like any data that's been sent by the server. Okay. You ping the server and the server responds back with some data and you get it. Okay. For those particular requests, you use the get method. About the post method. So you are a client. Okay. So you are connected to server. Just a second. So you are connected to server, and in here you are sending some data from your end. Okay, it may be any data, any kind of data. It may be, let's just say you want to fetch certain tables from the database, fetch certain data from the database. So you send that information like which table does contain that data and what's the data you want to fetch. So you send this data, it may be any data. Okay, so you are sending some form of data, and in the response, you may be getting a response. Okay, so you may be getting a response, or okay. So you usually get a response to this particular. So there is exchange of data. You are sending some data, and it is the server is processing the request and sending back some data. Okay, which you have asked for. All right. So if this is the architecture, then we usually use post. So here you are sending the data, and the server is responding back with the data. So in the get, you are sending nothing. You are just pinging the server, and the server is responding back with the data. Okay. So what does this put does is, so use put method when you have a data and you send it to some server. Okay. See, again, this is client, this is server. Okay. You have the data, you send it to server, and server has a logic to update something. Let's just say your Aadhaar card. Okay. You want to update your name in the Aadhaar card. Okay. You usually put a put request there. That is, you update your name. Okay. I may write like Arya. Okay. Initially, it was like they missed my R. So I it was, and then I updated it to Arya. Okay. So this data, this Arya name, I will send it, and in the server, so it gets my data from the database, and it updates my name to be Arya. Okay, that's it. It may send the confirmation that something has been updated, or it may not send. Okay, sending back the data is not necessary in this put request. Okay, and as of delete, you send the data. Okay, and here the server processes this request and actually deletes. So this is let's say you want to delete a record. Okay, so let's say you are like Instagram user and you want to delete your account. You put up a delete request. Okay, so then what happens is, so you essentially request the Instagram to delete your data. So in that case, it actually deletes the data from the database, whatever the information is there, it deletes it. For such deletion process, right? So use delete. What are the most common request methods which are usually like used is, it is get and it is post, and post is very essential. Okay, post is usually used. So I guess Saurabh, with your experience, can you
Yes, yes,
confirm
yes.
this? So
Definitely, even we hardly use the get also. Like post is the mostly used
method,
method, and
right?
then get is like a basic. You just fetch the data from
Okay.
database.
So basically, maybe if there is a report section and if you want to get the data of like in a like, let's say when the page opens, you have to show the database tables. Okay, at that time you may use get, but usually for any processing kind of thing, it's post, and usually post is usually used, correct? Extensively
Even
used.
when we want to use the filters in a get, it's better we
Right.
use a post there because we can
True,
apply
true.
multiple filters.
Correct, correct. Right. So Manognya, does that make sense? So yesterday I showed you like in the inspect. So what are the different methods that's been applied there, correct?
Yes.
So which method to use? It is decided on like what kind of operation you are like intended to do. Understandable? Any
Yes.
doubts here?
No.
Okay, great. So yeah. So once you say API, okay. So there could be like there are types of APIs, right? There could be like public API where like weather application API, which could be like online free. Okay. So you would just hit that API and you get the response of the weather. Okay. Or there could be some private APIs where you have to pay something, like let's say OpenAI APIs. Okay. So for pro subscription, it gives you like a new endpoint and some validation. Okay. So whenever you hit that with the validation, it responds back. So it is a private API. Okay, you are essentially so all the requests are handled by some private company. Okay, it is not simply on the internet for public use. Okay. And then comes like let's just say internally companies use. Okay, they have certain applications internally for their employees, and the data is within the company, and those APIs are accessible through the company like company members only. Let's just say have some like Arya at XYZ company name, okay, company extension. Then I can say, so whenever this extension at ABC, okay, this extension is found, only these people can access this API. Okay, that's again the security. That is very what you call it, like it is not a private API. So yeah, it comes under a private API, but it is more of like company specific API. Okay, outside the organization they can't use this. So those are like dependent on like how these API are used. Those could be like different type of APIs, and there are other APIs depending on the architecture too. So these methods are for REST APIs. Okay, so usually we use REST APIs. Correct, Saurabh? So have you explored like any other type of like APIs?
No, but I just wanted to know like the API which we create from something like a React or
Mhm.
some JavaScript, they are not REST, right?
Not sure on JavaScript. So what we create on like in Python we have like something called Flask, Django. Okay,
Mhm.
these are REST APIs.
Okay, okay, okay.
Right. So yeah, so API security we have to handle. So this is not our topic anyway, but yeah, I thought of like explaining it a bit anyway. Okay, so let's just explore one by one. So access management, as said. So who can access this particular API? You have created an API. So you have created an application program and there is an interface now. Okay. So who can access it anyway? Okay. You have to manage it, right? So it could be like public access, it could be private access, it could be like internal company access, right? So who accesses this? So okay, this is asset management. Sorry. Yeah. So So what are the assets basically? Let's just say your API. This all the APIs doesn't connect with database. Okay. So if the API, the processing, if it needs the database values or if it needs to operate on database, then only we connect with database. So what are the assets it needs to like it, imagine if there is an API. This is an API which calculates the sum of the variables provided. Okay, this could be an API, no worries. Okay, so if variable one, variable two is given, it adds it. Variable three is given, it adds it. So that's the simplicity of this API. So giving access to database of a company is completely utterly unnecessary for this API, right? So there is no necessity of it being connected to database or it being connected to some other internal maybe files, okay, or folders or any internal data. Okay, that's unnecessary, right? So asset management. So there is an API. So if there is an application program, so what does it need to handle, what it is doing, and what is it allowed to do? Okay, all this we need to handle it with care. Okay, giving more access to giving more access unnecessarily. That may be agent or it may be LLM or it may be API. This could harm because if some hacker or someone who want to exploit you gets this API structure right, so he can damage so many things since there are unnecessary access to this API now. Right. Does that make sense? So next comes code injection. Okay. So let's just say you allow user to write SQL queries. Okay. So you take up this SQL. So whatever the user write up this SQL query, you take that up. So what your application program does is it runs this query, it connects to database and it runs this query. So what do you think, Saurabh? Is it a safe thing to do? Is it how like incorporated it's done?
No, 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 we don't do this. We
Right.
go with subscription keys and
Right.
similar.
So you ask user to select certain things. And depending on user selection, you internally handle like what are the things that need to be managed, and you pass it to the backend, and backend will handle like structuring a query safely and executing it safely and responding back, correct? So this is the usual thing. So allowing user to write up the query and executing it could create like problems. Like let's just say somebody wants to exploit the system. This becomes very easy, right? So they can write up an injection query, SQL query, which deletes all the database. Okay, it deletes all the tables within the database. Let's just say. So with a one single query, you have destroyed a company. So the company will go bankrupt with that. Correct. So in order to, it is not just for SQL. So SQL, Manognya, are you familiar with SQL? Manognya?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you know it, right? Okay,
Yeah.
great. I just got this guilt feeling that by using this SQL term, I'm actually confusing you.
No, no.
Okay. So SQL is a language like through which you connect to databases. Okay. By allowing user to write up his own SQL queries and just running it in the backend, he can actually delete the whole thing. Okay. That could be like injection prompt. And if he understands the pattern here also, even though we are collecting the user selections and then creating our SQL query internally. So if he somehow gets to know like how we are creating this SQL query, okay, we could still exploit this. So this is same as like how there is an LLM and there is user query. So how we are handling this? What is the system prompt and what's the user prompt that's being formatted? So if we understand the system prompt and the requirements, other restrictions, so we can easily exploit our LLM, right? So we studied this earlier. So similarly, if we understand like how we are handling the user input internally, so he is doing basically injections, that is code injection or maybe SQL injection, database injections. So through this, he can exploit our system. Understandable?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, we will remove. Okay. So now comes like data exposure. So again, this time like what I explained asset management, right? So this is so what is needed for this particular API, whatever the data that's needed for this particular API, let's just say it deals with like HR. Okay. So this HR API, which is used by HR department, should have access to like employees, their salaries, and their documentation, maybe correct. But they don't have to get like what the employee is working on, whatever the projects he's working on, the project details. They don't want these details, right? So these details, there is some management. So there is some manager, and under him there are certain employees. And what the employees are doing, whatever the projects is assigned and whatever the work they're doing, this information is good for manager. But HR doesn't want like what we are working on and how we are doing it, right? So for a particular API, so what are the data that's been accessed by that API? What is the data access that we have provided? Okay, that becomes very essential because again, the exploitation could happen if it has like more than necessary data access. Make sense? No doubts with that, right?
No, no.
Object level authorization for this, I have to explain classes and objects. And I mean, with the OOPS concept, there I will explain this. All right. So logging and monitoring. So user, there is an API. So user interacts with this API and he gets like the information, everything is fine. In this particular architecture, so you have to maintain a log, which user one has took this data. Okay, he sent this data and this was the response. So all this we need to maintain a log of it and monitor the responses. Let's just say some user 10 has got some problems. Okay, so he sent a request and he didn't get a response. So what happened there? We have to understand that. But in order to understand this, we must maintain a record that user 10 didn't get the response. Okay. Or if you got the response and the response is like something which is not he was expecting. Okay, which is not expected. So the application behaved differently for him. Okay. So what went wrong? In order to understand that, we have to log this, right? We have to monitor this. So that's why in an API, let's say in an application program interface or application program, So adding up this logging and monitoring is very essential. Okay. So function level authorization. So let's take up an example of, let's say, bank. Okay. So here manager has certain access. Maybe the CEO has certain access. Maybe employees. Okay. Has certain access. Correct. So this CEO may alter the bank account details directly. Like let's say you want to add like 10 lakh. Okay. He can assign like 10 lakh loan. No worries. Okay. This manager can assign like, let's say, 1 lakh loan. That's the limit. The employee can do it only for 10,000. Okay. So depending on their level, okay, they have certain exceptions and they have certain like limits of their own, correct? So function level authorization is like at so this HR API can't be accessed by, let's say, manager is trying to access this particular API. There should be some restriction. Okay. So he doesn't want this, and we shouldn't give access to this particular manager. Shouldn't have access to this HR APIs, and similarly, HR shouldn't have this access to like manager APIs. Okay, there should be some restriction at different levels. Okay, so how to create those restrictions? That is what, like, it's about functional authorization. Security misconfiguration. Uh, yes. So let's say there is bearer token. So in order to get this authorization, right? So we use something called like bearer token, and so can I mention other security we use? Sort of.
Um, Security misuse.
Sorry.
Sorry. Come back again, Arya.
Like for security purpose. So while accessing an API. So let's say we are using bearer token. This is like we
Yeah.
usually use.
We have
There could be like
key,
solution.
API key and resource.
Yes, there could be like API key. Okay, which need to be validated every time. There could be OAuth, to access certain logins. Usually for
Yes,
application
yes,
logins and
yes.
everything, we use something called OAuth. So this allows us to for two-factor authentication. Could be simple password match or said, let's say, button pass kind of thing. Okay, so we are expecting certain keywords, maybe some password, and if they have that password, we will allow it. Okay, all these are security again, right? And then comes user authentication. So here it is to authenticate the user. Let's just say our API is used by three different companies. Okay, this is company one A1, this is A2, A3. Okay, but this API should be allowed only for A1, A2, A3. Let's say this A3 has an employee who has like A4 company friend. Okay, if he provides API to this API link to this particular A4 person, he shouldn't be allowed to use this. Okay, how to restrict it? Maybe by, let's just say, every employee in a company has his own like a professional email ID. Okay, that employee email ID. So we are verifying this. So if there is some area at A1, okay, we are allowing it to use this API. Okay, at A2, we are allowing this company to. A3, we are allowing this company to. Area at A1, A2, A3, we are allowing it. So let's just say if it is A4 or any other personal IDs, we will restrict it. That does that make sense? Through that, we can actually use as user authentication, or we can use again OAuth or something. Okay, to validate individual user. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, yes.
Anabla, any doubts here?
No.
So yeah, since we are at APIs, so yeah, we checked on like what are the methods we could send up our request, and how does that method, what does that method actually mean, right? So we'll also check with the response codes. So Saurabh, you want to like take up a mic and explain this?
Mostly, it gives a kind of information without seeing the message, like if based on codes.
Mhm.
As in, like, if it's coming 401, we can understand that it's related to the authentication. If
Right.
so, any code, anything which relates with the error in the payload. Let's say our authentication is not completed or the payload is wrong or something, like when it reaches the server and server responds. So it's
Right.
like and 500 is something like when the server is unavailable, server is not responding, server is down, something related to server.
Yes. Okay. We will just explore it. Okay. So there is client, that is user, and this is the server API. Okay. So we are accessing the server through this API, and there is a response. All right. So it is not that every time you have to request with some certain data. Okay. Get doesn't let us like put up any data from our end. Okay. So it gets the data. That's it. Right. So any method doesn't matter. For any method, when you ping an API, when you ping an endpoint, this API is endpoint on the internet. That is the location of this API in the internet. Okay. When you ping it, so it performs any process that's happening. Okay. No worries. So it performs any process that's happening. Once you send this request, right? So there are certain codes. Okay. Response code we say. Sorry. So we say it to be response codes. So what this response code does is, so these response codes actually explain certain meanings. Okay, depending on like what the code is, it actually explains certain things. What happened with this particular architecture in this client server architecture? What happened? It is explaining with the response codes. So let's just explore like what is response codes. Before that, let me give you an like real example, a quick example maybe. Uh, yes, yeah. So I just reloaded the page, and this is the endpoint I'm hitting. Okay, so this is localhost port 113434. Okay, this is the port I'm hitting. So since I hit this, so yeah, you can see in the header there is a GET request that's happening. Okay, and you can see the status code is 200. Correct? There is certain status code. I said response code. Sorry, it's a status code. Okay, so the response is Polymorphism is run, and that's been displayed here, right? So maybe I just reload this, and you will get the same thing. Okay, so if I go to like some other page, this could be completely different. We explored this yesterday, Manavna, if you remember.
Yeah, true.
I tried to download this file and we got some response there, right? Some characters. So that was basically a file, right? So this is an example of like here the status code is mentioning what it is saying is, so when you say 200, so it is like the request you sent was accurate. Okay, it was correct and it hit the correct location. Okay, the API did some process and it has responded now. Okay, the user request has been successfully responded. Okay, or completed. So if that's the case, this 200 status code comes in, and this means the successful API hit. Okay. So similarly, other success status codes we will explain. So if it is something like 100 to 200 between, okay. So 101, 102, all these have certain meanings. But usually, so if it is some 100 something, so this is you have sent a request and the server has got your request and it is still processing it. Let's say there is certain application. Let's say there is a video editing application online. You upload your video and do certain changes, and then ask you to download. It instantaneously doesn't download, right? It has to do some process. It has to do some rendering. Okay. So at that time, it can say we are working on it. Maybe later you can come in and download it, or maybe we will inform once it is downloadable. Correct? For all such, right? The response code would be like something like 100 something, where the user request has been accepted. Some processing is going on. Maybe they will send you back some messages or something like that. Okay. So that is like it may be 101, 120, 130, 199. Okay. All these do have meaning, but in general, 100 plus means this is the message. Okay. The server has acknowledged the request and it is currently processing it. Then comes 200. Okay. It may be 200, it may be 201 or 299, doesn't matter. So if the response status code has something like 200 something, so that actually means server has effectively received your request. Okay. It has executed the request successfully. Okay. If the request is successful, it usually responds back with 200. If there are certain warnings or something like that, it responds with like maybe 200 something, 200, 240, all these numbers. Okay. They are very subtle changes. But usually if you get 200, that is a success of your request. If it is 300, okay, it is like redirecting the code. So let's say your phone is switched off. So you take up like your calls will be redirected to some other person, right? Understandable? So let's just say you had an application of your own. Okay. So you had a resources in Azure and now you have passed it to like AWS. Okay. So the API is different now, but you don't want to lose your customers. So what you will do is you will redirect any request that comes into this endpoint. You will redirect it to some other the next the updated endpoint. Okay. So for this 300 code will come in. Okay. The server has acknowledged your request. It is initiating a redirect and to additional action or additional action. Okay. For these particular, if it has to explain such thing, it responds back with 300 or 300 plus status code. Okay. What does 400 means? 400 simply means that you have sent the request, but it is unable to find the location of your, let's say 404 error. So what it means is, so whatever the URL you are trying to access, whatever the API endpoint you are trying to access, right? It actually doesn't exist. It is unable to find it in the internet. Maybe it has been closed or maybe it has been terminated or there is a connection error. We're not sure. But if it is unable to connect it to that particular endpoint, it will throw up like 400 something or 400 plus. Okay, the server encountered difficulty locating or accessing the page or website that you are trying to like connect to. Okay. So this happens for let's say you are trying to use some old government application. Okay, the applications which have been already banned or removed from the internet. If you still have link and you are trying to access it, these are the errors. So this is the status code you usually get. Then 500. So this actually means, so you have sent the request and the server has accepted your request. It tried to process your request, but there comes some error. Okay, this usually happens when the code breaks. Okay, so some edge cases you have hit and the code is breaking. So the application is unable to respond because the code is crashed, the website is crashed. Okay, at those time, yeah, it validates that it got the response. It tried to process, but the processing couldn't complete because of some reason. That is what it is explaining with like 500 plus errors. Okay, the client submitted a legitimate request. However, the server was unable to fulfill it. Understandable? Any doubts for Abhay here or Saurabh? Maybe Saurabh won't
No,
be
no,
having
no.
any doubts here.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, every day it's a day-to-day job.
Right. So that's why you have been a tester, right? So,
Yeah.
so Manavda?
No, we are good.
Oh, great. So yeah, we reached our like end of session timing, but if you got like 10 minutes, I shall explore all this quick. Okay, if that's fine.
Sure, sure, sure. We can do.
Okay. So yesterday we went through classes. Just increase this width a bit. So we have explored classes yesterday. We have explored like objects yesterday. So class actually binds up like different types of methods. So similar types of methods into its in a single package. Okay. So let's say list. There is a class list in Python. There is a class tuple in Python. Okay, that's why we can use list methods. on list only. That's why we can use tuple methods on tuple only. We can't use tuple methods on list or either list methods on tuple. Okay, what's differentiating is, so only object of that particular class can access the methods or data within that class. Okay, so when we create tuple, so it actually creates object of this tuple class. That's why whatever the method that's been explained, written within this class, right? So we can, through this object, we can only access those methods. That's why when we create a tuple, so tuple actually means the object of the tuple class, right? So we can only access the methods that's been defined under this tuple class. Similarly for the list. Okay. So there is a method called append. Okay. You can't go on like using, let's just say tuples object and try to use append. Append is specific for list and it is specific for list objects. Okay. So yeah, that could be the summary for list and sorry, classes and objects. Okay. So other four parameters. So just explain these pillars now. So polymorphism. So what does this do? So let's just say maybe with an example explanation, but let's just explain it first. So there is class, okay, car, and there is a method engine. So it explains like it has some logic for it returns maybe engine values. Okay, what is the average car engine and what's the other performance metrics maybe. Okay, there could be like another class bikes. Okay, this could also have a method called engine. Okay, now this will return the same things, but yeah, for bikes. Understandable, guys?
Yes, yes, yes.
So let's create car object. C is my car object. So I'm creating this car object. Now, when I do C dot engine, so I'm essentially calling engine method from the, since C is the object of car class now, so I can access engine method. So this will return me car engine metrics, correct? So these metrics are specific for cars. So let's just say there is something B. Okay, and this is bike. So this is an object of bike class now. When I do B dot engine, it actually gets me the bike engine metrics. Correct? So polymorphism means, so you can use the same method names in different class. Although they have the same name, they could behave differently. Okay. And the logic of like how they behave is dependent on the object of that particular class. Anyone, if it is a car class object, so whatever the logic written under this method engine, so that will be executed. If it is a bikes object, so the logic under its engine will be executed. Although they have the same name, or they may also have the same logic. Okay, maybe subtle differences. Okay, when you try to access them, so if it is a cars object, only this is accessed. The logic under this particular method is accessed. And when you access it to like bikes object, only this logic is executed. Okay, this property is called polymorphism. Okay, although if they are of same name, the properties could be like the logic could be different. Okay, so this is allowed like with this polymorphism character. Let's go for inheritance. Doubts? Sorry, any doubt here?
No, 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 no. Do we have
Right.
overloading and overriding here?
No, we don't have that in Python.
Okay, okay, okay.
So that's why object oriented. So inheritance. Okay. So there could be some class called vehicle. Okay. Now this explains like general vehicle. The vehicles does have wheels. Okay. They have some body. Maybe they have certain chains or headlights or anything, handles, all this. Okay. Some generic terms for vehicles that's been explained here. And there is some other class called bike now. Okay. Bike is also vehicle, right? So let's inherit it. So how we inherit it? So we pass the like parent class name while defining the like child class. Okay. So now when we define it like this, so bike class actually becomes the child class of vehicle. Okay. So since it is a child, so inheritance in general in English, right? So inheritance is something which you get from your parents or grandparents, correct? So similarly, the property, since bike is inheriting, sorry, bike is a child of this particular class, it can inherit all the properties that's been explained under this class. Okay. And there could be another class called car. Now car could also inherit vehicle's property. Okay. So there could be some different logic for both of these. In this, we can say bike and car are child node or child classes of this parent class, that is vehicle. Okay. So since they are child classes, they can actually access through any of the methods. Okay, that's been written or any data that's been written under vehicle class. So this property of inheriting the properties, right? That is what inheritance actually means. Understandable? Any doubts here?
No.
Great. For the first time, this could be confusing. Please do mention like if you've got any doubts or if you've got any confusion. Okay. Maybe I'll explain it with like different example if you have got doubts. Okay. So we have something called abstraction. So what this abstraction is, it actually hides the data or the complexity. Okay. So when we said like B is equal to bike class, and when we try to access B dot engine. Okay. So here I need not know what's the logic that's been written under this engine method, right? I don't have to understand this, or I don't have to repeat this, or I don't have to know what's been written under this engine method. Okay. So when I say L1 is my list, okay, L1 dot append and pass like 1. Okay, this I know that within the list for the last element, okay, for the last position, this whatever I'm appending the value that's been provided, that's been written under, correct? But I don't have to understand how does that happen? How does the append is implemented in list class, right? This implementation, we don't have to understand this. So that's so we don't know how it is implemented, but we can still access it. So that is what abstraction property actually means. Understandable, guys? Doubts here? Saurabh, Manogna?
No.
Right. So I, when you respond, try to like respond late, right? So I usually think like if there is some internet connection happened and I have lost
No,
you
no. We
guys.
have to this mute and mute is little bit slow. Like
Okay,
once we
okay.
unmute,
No
then
worries.
it takes a second to mute.
No worries. No worries. No worries. Yep. And now comes the last one, the encapsulation. Okay. What this does is, so we don't have private or protected. Okay. In access like of methods or data. So in other programming languages, we have something called private or protected. So protected, it allows only the class members to access the features. Okay. For private, it doesn't allow even the class members. Only methods of that particular within the method we can change it or something like that, right? So for that, protected and private is there. But as of in Python, we don't have like any of this. Okay. So in Python, we have this statement called uh, nothing is truly private in Python. So Python doesn't respect privacy. Okay. So this is a statement that's been written under Python. That is, nothing is truly private in Python. Okay. So, but still this encapsulation enables us to like have this protected or private elements that happen. We'll just explore now. But yeah, you have to remember one thing in Python, nothing is truly private. Okay. Everything can be accessed in certain way. Okay. So yeah, encapsulation. So how does we do it is, so let's just say there is a method. Okay, there is a method. This is a class bike. Okay, so under which we have a method called electric. Let's just say. So here we are getting some inputs, or maybe no inputs. We have written some logic. All right. So whenever we create like b is equal to bike, right? What is this b now? This is an object, correct? This is an object of class b, bike, right? So now through this object, I can access anything under this bike class. Is that right, guys? Okay. So with this b, that is the object of bike class, we can access anything, any method under this, let's just say bike class, right? So, but when we write something, some method or some data or some variable with single underscore behind it, right? So that makes it private. So how does it make it private means? So when we, let me just try to show you guys like what I am trying to explain. So here, let's just say I have like A. A is my string, correct? Now when I type like A
Yes, yes,
dot,
yes.
there are list of methods that's defined under for this A. That is A is a string. So all these are string methods, right? So these are the methods that's been defined under string class, for example. Okay. So let's just say I have to like I am a Python, like I am the creator of this. I have a separate custom data type. Okay. Let's just say ARIA data type. Okay. It has got its own property. I am defining all the properties. That's the custom data type. I'm writing it, and I'm writing some certain logic. And here, since I'm the owner of that particular data type, I want to allow myself to be like more lenient than like for public use. Okay. If a public is using my custom data type, they may have like some restricted elements, which I can definitely use. Okay. But I don't want to show them to those public users. So what I can do is, so I can create something like, let's just say class bike. Okay. So under class bike, I can explain, okay, this is in it, fine, leave it. And then something like dev engine is wheel, maybe. Okay, that's what this is wheels, and we have a certain logic here. So we don't know the logic. Let's just type pass now. So pass is something which you can use when you don't know what to write in, right? So, but you don't want to throw up an error. Okay, if I don't write this, this will throw up an error. This will throw up a syntax error. But if I write pass here, so this will just ask the compiler to like move on. Okay, right? No error here. Okay. So now I will create some other method called, let's just say speed. Okay, it's class, right? So I'll just run this. And in the next line, I will try to create like v is equal to bike. And I will also show you guys the type of p now. So earlier for the list and everything, we checked with the type, right? So there we got like class
Yes,
of
yes.
class list or class tuple. So here if I run, okay, seems
Is
to
it
be some
because
error.
of the private?
Okay. No, not actually. So here we are expecting certain things. So init is a method which is run whenever we are trying to create an object. So that is the first method that's run. Okay. And here we are expecting name, price, color to be passed, and I'm passing nothing, right?
Is it a init? Is it a constructor here or just a method?
Sorry.
Okay. It's
Yes,
just a
yes,
method,
yes.
right?
So
No
this is called
constructor
magic
thing.
method. You can say constructor. So yes, yes, you
Is it
can relate the concept here. So we call it magic method here. So the
okay?
property
But
of this method is it is run every time object is created.
object is created. But usually, constructor have the same name as class. But here we see init. So is it init
Yes,
going to be standard method for all the class if you want to
yes,
make the method as constructor?
yes. Usually init is the standard method which will be mentioned in any class. Okay. So that will
Mhm.
be run. That will run. So the property of init is like init actually means initialization. Okay. Whenever you're trying to
And
create and initialize the object for this particular class, this code will automatically run.
and the self keyword we are using to identify the current object. Like this,
Correct.
we use this in the Java. Here we have self.
Yes, yes. We use self.
Do we have kind of super kind of concept also? Like if you are inheriting, if you want to refer the
Yes,
inherited
yes,
like the parent class. So
yes. So we have to use
is it
super.
super or something like
No, no, we have super. So
super?
let's just
Okay.
say you are trying to access your parents' some variable. Okay.
Method, yeah,
That
inherited
time we
method,
can
yeah,
use it.
during
Yes.
polymorphism.
But we won't be needing it like for our AI development or testing development. So that's more of like
Okay, okay,
developer's perspective. So I
okay,
haven't
okay, okay.
explored much on it. I
Yes,
didn't
yes,
explain
yes.
much on it. Okay. So yeah, we will pass certain names. So we have to pass name A. Let's just say. So I love this ABC because they are straightforward, right? So B and C. Okay. So these are the like name, price, and color I'm passing. Three variables it is expecting, and I'm passing three variables. I need to pass anything. Okay. So now I'm passing it. So
In the
as you can
parameter,
see,
you have mentioned self. Why we are passing self there? Like init parameter. First parameter is self.
okay, self actually refers to the object of. So here we are creating object, right? So
Okay,
this
okay.
so this is a simple variable. So when we say B is an object, B is actually a reference to this object, right? So the object is created
Mhm.
once you type this. Okay.
Yes.
So once you type bike, yeah, the object is created. So if you are not passing a variable, if you are not passing the expected values inputs, that will throw up an error. But once you pass it, like this is
Mhm.
an object. So B is a reference of to this particular object. The variable, the meaning of the variable is same, right? So it references something. Right.
Mhm.
So
Got it.
here self means, so here in every method that the object can like directly use, right? So object from the object, if it is accessed by object or something, so then there has to be some keyword called self. So this is a standard keyword. You just mentioned like
Okay,
this
okay.
is used, right? So similar to that.
Yes, yes, yes.
So here, as I checked with type of B, right? So you can see no doc string, okay. So it is of bike class. So let me just print it and it will print beautifully that is it is the class from bike. Yeah, you already know it. I'm just typing it down. Okay. So this is of player class bike, right? So this main means actually, so this is of this particular file. That is what it is explaining. So it is of bike class. This is what we wanted to explain. Okay. Now let's just type in like b dot. Okay. Now you can see here. Okay, there is color, there is name, there is price. Correct. These are the variables with the self parameter. Correct. Name, price, color. So let's just say I'm choosing color. I'm just printing it. So the color we have passed is the last one, right? So that is C. Correct. So that is being printed. If we want something like a dot, so it will suggest us name. This will print up the name, the variable, whatever the variable it contains. The name is A, right? But you can observe one thing here. B dot, although there are two methods here. There is wheels and there is speed, correct? Manogna?
Sorry, could you repeat again?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. So basically, in this particular bike class, we have like three methods. So init method is run every time the object is created. Okay. So don't have to call it separately.
Yes.
So we have two separate methods. That is wheels and speed, correct?
Uh-huh.
So here, if I type like B is my object for this bike class now. Okay. Now if I type B dot, okay, you can see the suggestions, right? So
Right,
there,
right.
name, color, price are variables, right?
Mhm.
But wheels is a method, right? So
Right.
you can't see the speed method here, right? In the suggestions.
Yes.
So I can just go down and yeah, you can't see the speed method. So why is that so? This is because of encapsulation. So what it
Okay.
does is, uh, yeah. So what it does is, so when we type like this underscore before any variable name or maybe any method, right? So this actually means it is a protected method. Okay, we can still use it, no worries. So if I use speed, it will not throw up any error. Okay, it will not throw me. Okay, takes zero position. Okay, self we need to pass. Hmm. Okay, I haven't run this. Sorry, after updating it, I haven't run it. So now, yeah. So I'm accessing speed. So instead of passing, let's print and speed here for readability purpose, nothing else. So I run this.
The speed is
So
private, right? If I'm not wrong.
it is more of a protected. It can you can
Okay.
relate it to like protected class,
Okay.
protected
Okay.
method.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I'm speed is printing, but it didn't give me any suggestions when I just type like b dot, right. So it is not providing me with a suggestion of speed, right. So I remember one thing. So in Python, nothing is truly private. I said, right. So even though it
Mhm.
is not showing me, since I know that there exists a method called speed under bike class, so I can still use it. No worries. Okay, if I don't know it, nobody will use it, right? It is protected. But since I know it, I can use it. But Python will not suggest you to use it. Okay. So Python will not openly tell anybody that there is a method called speed which you can use. Okay. That is what this single underscore actually does. But you can still use it anyway, right? And then let's type up like another uh, double underscore speed. We went for speed and let's go for like aerodynamics. That's the word I just thought and I'm writing it. Okay, nothing in particular. So here we are passing self and let's type up like print. I'm too lazy to write this. So let's just copy paste. Yeah. So now again, let's just run this and here if I type b dot, you can see the suggestions. The suggestion still doesn't contain speed or aerodynamics, right? But if I type like underscore dot speed, it would run. This would run without issues, right? So it doesn't throw up any error. So it does the logic. So let's type the same thing here. Okay. So let's try to do the same thing for this. Okay. So what do you think? This should throw up an error or it should work? So this will throw up an error because it is saying bike object has no attribute called this double underscore and aerodynamics. So why does this happen is, so when we type up this double underscore, right? So Python, what it does is, so internally it does name mangling, something called mangling. Okay. So what does that mean is, we'll just get back to notebook to explain it. Okay. So yep. So for B is equal, okay. For B is equal to bike class. Okay. Now B dot, you can't type aerodynamics and expect this to run because when you put up like double underscore, the Python what internally does is it creates something. It doesn't let. So when we had speed, right? So it didn't show up any basically it didn't show it didn't recommend this particular method. Okay, but still since we know it exists, we can use it. But when we put up like double underscore, what it internally does is, so it creates something like bike dot aerodynamics. Okay, now if we try to access this aerodynamics method from like this, yeah, it will work. Okay, maybe double underscore bikes. Okay, this some logic it will implement to hide this particular method when you make it private. So this is not essentially private. So we can relate it to private. If this is protected, okay, this could be said to be private. Okay, this will, even if you type up the exact same words which you have like while defining that particular method, whatever you are writing, right? Then also you can't access this particular method because when you compile it, the name mangling happens, and in order to access this, you have to particularly call this in certain way. Okay. So let's just explain the error. If we have got like tools, why not use them, right? So this will essentially explain the same explanation, I guess. Okay. The error you are seeing is attribute bike object has no attribute is due to Python's name mangling feature. Okay. When you define a method with double underscore, like with a prefix of a double underscore, right? Python internally renames it to be like I explained, right? Underscore bike double underscore aerodynamics to make it harder to access from outside class. It calls a method you need to use its name mangled form. Okay. So let's just copy this. Okay. Let's just copy this. And now, no, we don't want recommendations. Cancel. Okay. But we will put something like this. Now we will try to access this. This will this logic. So now I can't essentially call b dot or b dot aerodynamics directly. I have to call it in this way because although I defined it this way, so since I have used double underscore, the Python actually does the name mangling and creates something like internally it creates this structure. Okay. So this is useful. Let's just say admin has certain access. Okay. And maybe manager has certain access and maybe employees has certain access. So let's just say all these all these methods, which are like for public, right? So these could be like accessed by employees maybe. And this protected class, these are like specific classes which managers know about and they can use this. Okay, they have some superpowers. And then comes the admin or the CEO, let's say. Okay, he has the ultimate powers. Okay, he can access any of this, and also he can access, he knows like this particular thing exists and he can use it in certain way. Okay, now to make sure this manager doesn't access this, so it is actually doing the name mangling. Okay, so that's why even though we have set it to be private, we can still access it, right? So here you can see aerodynamics, the logic is printed. So that's why the statement, nothing is truly private in Python. Okay, although we do the name mangling, yeah, we can still access it anyway. Okay, but yeah, it makes it like more protective. Does that make sense? Any doubts here?
No, no.
Okay, great. Sure, then, yeah, we went like too long now. Maybe we will end the session for today.